This video is brought to you by Squarespace. The internet has convinced you that espresso is impossible. And I'll admit, I'm partially to blame. Over the years, I've made multiple espresso tutorials, but I've done it with the times that have been changing. And so unless you watch every single video and you just hop into one here or one here 8 months later, it can seem very, very confusing. And I don't blame you. If you're a fellow dummy like me, sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, and let's dive into demystifying espresso in one sitting. Now, the way we're going to do this is by first understanding what the heck espresso is, especially with its evolving definition. We're going to talk about the variables that we need to focus on to make life easy. And we're also going to look at two different approaches to brewing espresso, a more traditional way and a more modern way, and how you can do that all on your machine regardless of what it is. So we'll start off with what the heck is even espresso? I know that you've had it, you see it in telly, you get this little cup with a little cream on top. What the frick is it? All it is it's a brew method where we're using an espresso machine or something that is pressurizing water through a puck of packed coffee. That is really as specific as the definition can get. Yes, I understand there's an official Italian definition, but even in Italy, espresso has not always been espresso in that specific way. What espresso was before it was how it is now was essentially what a moka pot is. Steam pressure, water going through at higher than boiling, hot extraction, but it was a closed system. It was a basket. Water went through coffee, through the holes of the basket into a receptacle. The ratio at that point was much bigger than 1:2. Then we fast forward, we get a much higher pressure, we get better grinders that can grind really finely, unlocking more flavor at a finer grind size due to the bigger surface area. Bada bing, bada boom, everything has changed. So the reason you all want it at home, though, is likely due to your experience with an Italian-style shot. In this video, we will take a look at how to brew that, because it's actually very easy. Now, over the years, there's been a lot of people complaining about the difficulty of espresso, but that's less because the process somehow got harder in the last 20 years, and more so that the process has stayed the same, and the beans we are using have changed. Our coffees have shifted, our flavor preferences have opened up to new worlds as we have gotten much higher quality coffee than we had many years ago. It's not even in the same ballpark. In addition to that, we have better roasting approaches. We understand how to preserve the origin much better. We have more varieties today that we never really had before with better agriculture in order to grow them better. So when we're looking at espresso, the variables we need to concern ourselves with are grind size. That's largely how we're going to make a lot of our changes. Temperature, if you have the capability of changing yours. If you don't sweat it too much. And ratio. So ratio would be how much coffee to how much water. So if you have an espresso machine and you don't already have a scale, change that. It'll change your life. The typical approach to espresso is doing a 1:2 ratio. So there's that ratio again. So if we did 20 grams of coffee, we'd expect 40 grams coming out in around 30 seconds. Now, I am purposefully not really focusing on time as much because I don't want us to get bogged down in time. But time is an important aspect. What we're going to do actually is we'll pull this whiteboard out, which, this is backwards, but I just like showing off the design of these whiteboards. They're so simplistic. The number one thing to notice, though, is this one's a bit too long for my camera, so I only really show this portion of it, so it's more like this. And when you cut off it to this portion, it really turns from a rectangle to a Squarespace, which is the sponsor of today's video. Squarespace is an awesome online resource that allows you, a creative and entrepreneur, to put your thoughts and ideas out into the world. All in one type of situation. You go on there, you can create your website. Boom. They got aesthetic templates that you just click on, you put the font you want, and you can be a wonderful graphic designer yourself. Oh, you want to sell something? Guess what? You can put your shop in there as well. Oh, you want to create a community where you chat with the people that enjoy your stuff? Boom, bada bing, bada boom. You got a community on there, and it's all in one. And guess what? I've got a little something for you. www.squarespace.com/Lance Hedrick. You'll get 10% off your first purchase of a domain or a website. Check out the free trial, see if it works for you. Use that code. Helps me, helps you, helps the channel, helps everybody. Win, 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 win situation. Anyway, thank you, Squarespace, for sponsoring. Let's get back to nerdy but dummy stuff. Time is something that a lot of people get way too bogged down in. They think in terms of 25 to 30 seconds. And if it's outside of that window, it's not good. And I understand where this comes from. Reality is if you're outside of, at least if you're underneath the 25 seconds, the likelihood of you hitting that mythical 9 bar and maintaining 9 bar is next to impossible. If you go up beyond this, I understand the fear there. You can tend to get it. That means you're probably too fine. You're getting muted aroma. You're getting some sourness due to inefficient extraction. But even dummies need to understand very simple things. And I'm going to put it in simple terminology. Pressure is something we need to sort of understand, but not obsess over. Pressure is not a make or break situation. Now, years ago, people assumed pressure was. They're like, oh, we need 9 bar. And they also assumed temperature was the most important. But that's because back then, the things we had control over were PID, and then changing up the spring and an overpressure valve for pressure. So we were obsessing over these things because the grinder weren't really many options. We didn't really get to do much. A flat 9 bar would be like if we built pressure and the whole extraction went at 9 bar. However, original espresso and what a lot of people still prefer today, which is a spring lever style of espresso, is an up and then a down. Whereas most machines just go up and then they maintain, assuming you grind finely enough. So the pressure thing you need to understand is a simple equation, which is just that pressure is the product of resistance and input flow. So what I mean by that is we have grounds. So whether grounds are big or they're small, the smaller you go, the more resistance you get. Another would be fresh coffee versus old. Fresh coffee will give you more resistance than old coffee due to the fact there's more CO2. Okay, so CO2 is a big thing for that. These things will greatly affect your resistance. More nerdy things would be the basket geometry. So how the basket holes are, how wide the exit is on the bottom of your espresso basket. If you have a convex basket or a step-down basket, whatever that might be. Puck depth is another thing that can affect resistance, but we won't bog you down with all of that just now. But what you need to understand is when we're talking in terms of this equation, which these are not the proper mathematical terms, but if we did pressure equals resistance times flow, that's just so we can remember it better. Again, those are not the mathematical terms. Don't look up P equals RF. That will not show up in the way I'm saying. Anyway, pressure is that 1 bar, 9 bar, 3 bar, 4 bar, whatever bar. Resistance would be any of these things all together, essentially, the summation of them all working with each other. Then flow would be the input flow, so the speed with which water is exiting your machine and hitting your puck of coffee. In a normal espresso machine, that flow is static. It will slow down because it shunts part of the flow if it's hitting too high of a pressure, but there's a ceiling to it. Whereas resistance, your ceiling is how fresh is your coffee, how fine can you grind it, how small of holes can you make on your basket, and how few of holes can you make on your basket, like a pressurized basket. So these are things that we can control. And by that way, we have some control over pressure. Obviously, we can control pressure by going really coarse. We do have control, but it's indirect, meaning I can't say, I just want to turn this to 6 bar. We have to play with these things. I know you're sitting there like, this is for dummies. This will help you. And why I say that, you may be looking at your machine and it shows the pressure gauge like some Brevels do. Why isn't it hitting 9 bar? It says it's at 7 and it keeps going down. We know if it's not hitting it, it's one of two things. Either the flow is too low, or the resistance is too low, or some sort of combination, because this is a product, it's multiplication. So those two multiply by each other, right? If resistance goes down, which it will, obviously, as water's going through it, the resistance is going down. The capability of your grounds to withstand the weight of the pressure is going down. With that, we have lowering pressure. Flow rate, however, doesn't go down. It wants to keep going up until it hits its ceiling. So that flow rate is going to continue to climb until it can no longer climb based off of the inside parameters, what your pump is allowing it to do. People look at their machine, it comes out of the box and it's 9.5 bar. They freak out that the factory didn't set it at 9. There is no difference. Kind of like, what is a million plus 1? It's a million. That 1 doesn't mean anything. In the same way, this is like a million plus 1. 9.5 to 9 bar, 10 bar to 9 bar isn't going to cause any real difference in your cup. The only thing we have to do in order to hit these parameters is your grind size. When you have your basket, you want to fill it up, untamped grounds until there's like a dome. Then all I want you to do is tap the sides to level it into place. The amount of coffee you want in your basket should still be sort of seeing over the edge. Then we're just going to tamp it. We're going to take our tamper and you're going to push until it pushes back at you. If you feel squishing, keep pushing until the squish is gone. And so by the end of it, you should have a basket that has a tamped puck As a tamp puck with about that much headspace. Now, of course, this is not identical to what it will be, but once you push down, you should have a sliver, maybe a centimeter or so of headspace, and that is ideal. Now, you want to fill up your basket as much as possible post-tamp before you get an indentation of your shower screen or something. So essentially, put it in, lock it into your machine, then pull it out immediately. If you have a screw hole or an indentation from your screen, you have a little bit too much coffee. Take some coffee out until you're there, and that's the amount of coffee you want to use. Don't take an arbitrary number like 18 grams as what works for your basket. For instance, I have a basket that's an 18-gram basket rated 18 grams. I fit 23 grams of a really light roast into it the other day because light roasts are more dense. You can fit more coffee per volume. In fact, Breville comes with a really nice tool, the razor tool, that does a good job. You can check the puck depth. They have given you what the perfect puck depth is for their machine with the razor tool. After you tamp, put it in. If it touches coffee, you've got too much. If it's not touching coffee, you don't have enough. We are going to weigh our output with this scale. It doesn't need to be a great scale. As long as it gets down to a gram, that's going to be fine. And we're going to weigh it out. So if we put, let's say 18.5 was perfect. If you're going for a traditional style shot, we're going for 1 to 2. So that would be 37 grams is what we're looking at in the scale. So the scale comes, we get 37 grams, but we look at the clock and it says 15 seconds. Took 15 seconds to get 37 grams out. What does that mean? Well, that means it went too fast. And you go, it was also showing low pressure, my machine's broken. No, if it came in 15 seconds, that means it had next to no resistance. If it had next to no resistance, what does that mean? Oh, but my machine showed 6 bar, 5 bar. My machine's messed up. The reason it was 15 seconds, it didn't have the right pressure. No, it didn't have the right pressure because you didn't give it adequate resistance. How do we give it more resistance, everyone? To increase 15 up, we will just go a little finer, make the particles smaller coming out of our grinder. Then we're going to do everything again. We'll do it, and then boom. Now, 33 seconds. Oh no. Well, if we want to get in that 25 to 30 second window, what do we do now? We decrease resistance just a little bit. Some grinders have more retention than others, meaning there's coffee left in the burr chamber. If you make a change and immediately pull a shot, it could have leftover grounds from the previous shot. So maybe dump a few grams between your dial changes. Taste every shot. You may find you love 15 seconds. You may find you love non-traditional style of shots, which is a growing population. A growing amount of people prefer that. And you can still get crema on 15-second shots with darker roasts because all you need is like a couple of bar of pressure to get crema. You don't need 9 bar for crema. You can get crema at 4 bar perfectly well. Just the same amount of crema as at 9 bar depending on your grind size and the way you have your machine set up. And then try it at 33. You may prefer 33. Once you're in the zone at a 1 to 2, then don't change anything. Just stop it earlier. Stop it at a 1 to 1.5. If you stop it at a 1 to 1.5, it'll probably take, if you're dialed in at 30 seconds, it might take 25. Try that. If you want it a little longer, 1 to 2.5, and you're dialed into 30 seconds, it may take 35. Try that. If you prefer the bounce of it, but it has a little bit of like bitterness, or it has a little bit of like an over extraction taste to it, where it might be a little drying from astringency, or it might be a little watery, or something on those lines, you can always coarsen the grind up a bit. Whenever you go down in ratio, maybe it's a little sour. Maybe you want to increase extraction a bit. Maybe you could do something like go a bit finer, assuming you are not choking your machine and causing way more heterogeneous flow, uneven extraction. We understand that finer grind does allow a higher ceiling for extraction, but it also greatly intensifies the potential of poor flow through the puck. Ideally, we have water going through like this, right? But the finer we grind, the more chances there are of areas of more and less concentration. So let's say we have a really concentrated area here. The water's going to want to go around that. We tend to refer to this as channeling. Some people want to push back against the existence of channeling. So I just say heterogeneous flow. It's not an even flow through the puck, which can cause this part that comes out to taste sour because we haven't extracted it enough. When you under-extract parts of the puck, it can taste sour. When you over-extract parts of the puck, it can taste bitter and it can get into drying, astringent. So let's see what we pull out. So right here, we have pressure building and boom, we're up. See, it's over 9, no big deal. Let's recenter that. Yeah, just a little over 9, but it's gonna taste like a 9 bar shot. Doesn't really matter. So here it comes, nice and slow. We're at 20 seconds. We're at halfway at our yield, but It speeds up a lot as it goes. There we go. 39 grams in 26 seconds. So that's right in our kind of golden zone. We have loads of crema. This is a freshly roasted coffee. It's not super dark. It's just like medium light. But you can do, these traditional style shots with that. If we wanted to extend the time, I would just go a little bit finer on the grind size. I'd maybe purge a couple of beans to reset that chamber. If we wanted to go closer to 20, boom, go a little coarser. Grind a couple of beans, get rid of that, go coarser and do it again. And that should speed up our time. So it's a game of playing with resistance. Our flow, we're not flow controlling. So our flow is just built in. Whatever that is, that is. We're playing with controlling resistance. The only real control we have is that. Now, other ways, this is more advanced, other ways to control resistance, as I said earlier, is the basket type. So a basket with a lot more holes or holes out to the edges. Or if you want to slow it down, really narrow holes or a hole that is like a convex basket or a step down. You could do puck depth, so getting a deeper basket so there's more coffee to go through. One other thing to play with resistance that's super advanced is a paper filter below the grounds. If you do a really thick paper filter, it can actually increase hydraulic resistance or the resistance that we have there. If you do different types of paper filters, they could actually decrease the resistance by opening up more surface area for the extraction. So if you do something like Alströms or Wattman 5s, those can increase the pressure or the resistance. If you do something like an AirPress filter on the bottom, it can increase the speed actually. It tastes like a medium light roasted coffee as espresso, a little bit sour, there's good texture. It's a little imbalanced, and that's one of those things where you just have to kind of be okay with that. I know there are those of you who love that, and that is fair. As you saw at the end, the last 20 grams came in 6 seconds. That floodgate is just wide open, and light roast, medium light, all of that, they disintegrate. Not the best term, but they do much more rapidly than dark roast, which will just slowly increase the flow. And in fact, a lot of dark roasts can stop increasing flow because the resistance becomes saturated, or it becomes like concretized essentially. So anyway, there's our dark roast example. Whenever you are pulling espresso with lightly roasted coffee, there's going to be a huge difference. Dark roast, very brittle, produces a lot of fines, which are tiny little particles which can help increase resistance, and dark roast has more inherent carbon dioxide produced during roasting. The lighter you roast, the more dense the coffee, the less brittle, therefore the less fines, the less soluble, and the less carbon dioxide that is produced during roasting. You have to go an infinitesimally amount finer with a light roast than you do a dark roast. 18 grams of a dark roast will look like this. If you do 18 grams of a light roast, it'll look like that. So you also have less resistance by bed depth, which is another factor of resistance. So especially to those of you who always do the same dose, you are quadrupling that exponential factor where you will have less resistance, meaning you'll have to compensate with just grind size. That's really fine. The finer you grind, the worse the coffee will taste. And the reason is because it's not only opening more extractability for good things, it opens up extractability for really bad things. Because of all this less inherent resistance, they can't hold 9 bar for very long. So you'll see if you graph shots, you'll see a peak at 9 and then it drops down with really lightly roasted coffees. Now let's get into really nice flat burr grinders. That will exacerbate it even more. A cone grinder, like these old school grinders, they will allow you to have a lot more fines build up and a wider distribution, meaning when you look at the grounds, there's a wide area of the biggest grounds. Like there could be some at 200 microns, 210, 220, 230, 240, 250, 60, 70, 80, 90. It's a big wide hump of where those are. And then a big old hump of these fines, these tiny particles around 50, 70 microns. But with these nicer grinders and a lot of these flat burr grinders, you have a much more narrow particle peak and you have a much smaller hump of fines. So you also aren't getting help with the grinder to produce the pressure. Making a light roast traditional shot becomes more and more difficult and your window of acceptability shrinks. If you're using a standard basket that is made for more medium dark roast and you put light roast in it, ground really finely to produce 9 bar, it's not going to give you enough back pressure. So it's at this point with light roast, if you are obsessed with this idea of 1 to 2 9 bar shots, you could grab a convex basket that has a tiny outlet and you could do that, or play with pressurized baskets for light roast. If you have a Breville or a DeLonghi with a built-in grinder and it is not capable of grinding finely enough with your light roast to produce more than a 15-second shot, that's not uncommon. It's not the roaster's fault. It is the grinder's fault for not taking into account a wider variety of roasters. They're mostly made, and I know this because I've chatted with manufacturers, for supermarket coffee, because that's the majority business. But if you're outside of supermarket coffee, they are not ideal for that, and they can break from not having enough torque, and they just might not get you a fine enough grind size, whereas it may be perfectly fine enough for a darker roasted coffee. There is a new school way of approaching a light roast shot, and it does not deal with a 1 to 2 in 30 seconds. It's largely ratio based. It's what you want on your ratio. But then you're grinding really coarsely and you're just letting it run essentially as fast as possible. There is a built-in water debit. On this machine, it's like 6 grams a second, let's say. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't measured it in a bit and I don't remember. But let's say it's 6 grams a second. That means every second, the max amount of water that can come out is 6 grams. Let's put whole beans in. Not even grinding them, we're gonna get, for a 60 gram yield, we'll get a 10-second shot. Now let's grind those in half. Let's take a knife and cut the beans in half. We're still getting a 60 gram shot in 10 seconds. Let's go to French press coarse grounds. We're probably getting about a 10-second shot. As we're getting finer, the time's not changing. And that's because there is a point at which you're so coarse that the water's running through almost as if it's unperturbed. That's the range that I recommend a lot of people they get to the edge of whenever doing really light roast. And these are where we get into turbo shots. So turbo shots in the original kind of iteration of this, and I did a video years ago, one of the first videos on my YouTube, and this paper that talked about turbo shots recommended 7 to 15 seconds. Now what's interesting about that is this was based off of commercial machines, which commercial machines can go up to 8 to 10 milliliters a second. So doing a 45 or 50 gram yield in 7 seconds is doable on a commercial machine. It's not doable on these home machines with vibratory pumps. The water just does not come out that quickly. They also recommended a flat 6 bar profile. It is impossible to hit 6 bar in that amount of time. We need resistance. So if you're wanting to pull a turbo shot at home, you do not need to mess with your OPV. You could have a 15 bar pump. You could have a 20 bar pump. It doesn't matter. Pressure is absolutely even more so a red herring when we're doing fast shots. So if you're a light roast enthusiast, 11 to like 16 seconds can taste divine on just a normal machine. Because we're grinding so much coarser, our flow is going to be a lot more even. So if you remember earlier, with the really fine grinds, there are areas of more and less dense population. It is nowhere near like that when we're grinding this coarsely. So water can go way more evenly. We are grinding about the same grind size as a really dark roast does for a 9 bar shot. But remember, the really dark roast has a ton of CO2 in it, has a ton of fines in it, and has a ton of brittle, soluble material that the water wants to stick onto and it turns into like a concrete. Anything under 20 seconds, I consider to be like a more modern style shot. If you're under 20 seconds, you are not hitting 9 bar. If you're under 20 seconds, you're not maintaining any type of high pressure. In fact, I would say most 20-second shots are going to look more like this. Almost like a built-in lever, and 9 bar is here. So you're probably peaking at like 6, and then the water flow is taking over and the resistance is going bye-bye. Do a 1 to 2.5, do a 1 to 3 ratio, increase the ratio a bit, and try doing that in 15 seconds, 14 seconds. Do it until you find some sort of balance. If you do it in 15 seconds and it's really sour, sharp, add some water to it. If that fixes it, then you're good. Or add some water to it, and if that almost is perfect, then maybe just extend the extraction a bit to make up for that water you added to it. What I mean by that is, let's say we have a 45 gram yield. Then you add 15 grams of water, so now you have 60 grams. And it tastes nice, but you wish there was a little bit more kind of coffee taste, so to speak. Then all you have to do is the next time, instead of stopping your shot at 45, stop it at 60 and see how that tastes. We're not worrying about time nearly as much. If it comes out at 12 seconds, 15 seconds, it doesn't matter. We're worrying more so about the ratio and that grind size. 1 to 2, 1 to 3 tend to be pretty standard. 1 to 3 is what I see being the most practiced style of turbo shot, and this allows for enough liquid to come through. Now you may say, this isn't giving me 20+% extraction like really finely ground coffee at 30 seconds does. You'd be right. It does not. You also might say, if you did a caffeine test, there's a little bit less caffeine in these really fast shots, and you'd be correct. Time has a big impact on the caffeine extraction. During espresso extraction, once you go past 18% extraction, negative flavors tend to overwhelm the concentrations of what is in our cup. Keeping the extraction faster is a nice hodgepodge of positive things for your cup. You get to retain more aromatics because you're experiencing it sooner. It doesn't have much time to volatilize away, and you're not getting too much concentration of really bitter compounds into your cup of coffee. This is going to be ugly, and it's going to come out fast, but this is why I told you years ago, naked portafilters are liars sometimes. Just because you see spraying and wild splashes does not mean channeling. Whoever told you that was only drinking really dark roast, really fresh, where the viscosity was so high that if there was something going on, then something's going on. We're going to start our shot. Look at that. And I'm going to let it go to 60. That's almost a 1-to-3. All right, that was in 11 seconds. Well, I'm assuming it was 60. These Akayas tick me off. If liquid gets on the scale, it tears it out. All right, let's see what this actually is roughly. There's some remnants still in here, but all right, 55. So 56 was probably about right. So I did stop it on time. So about 10, 11 seconds. I could go finer, but that's what we're working with. Once I transferred it, the little like film on top that could be called crema, I guess, was gone. But if you watch the pressure gauge, I didn't look at it, but I'm assuming it didn't really climb at all, if it did. This is quite nice. Very balanced. The thing is you have to be okay with the fact you're not getting crema. You won't have a worse body unless what you see as the only good body is one with crema, which, okay, understandable. But essentially, body and tactile are not just the sum of the amount of polysaccharides and oils, right? That would assume that our tongue is only capable of detecting texture based off of our mechanoreceptors, which I've gone on rants this before, but essentially, that is one way to experience tactile and texture. But another way is through the chemicals. That's why you can have 3 filter coffees all at the same concentration, have completely different body experiences, one tasting kind of yogurty, one being like tea, and one being like milk or something like that. Anyway, I think this is a great shot. I would probably boost the extraction a smidgen by going a couple of ticks finer, but maybe that would push it just to an 11-second shot, or maybe it'd still be 10. I don't know if we're beyond the path of no return, beyond the path of no return, but you know, it is what it is. Tasty is what tasty is, and we got to chase that. And if it's not in our current paradigm, maybe it's worth expanding the paradigm. That is the video. Longer than I intended for it to be, but you know, welcome to the channel. That's what we do here. If you enjoyed, please again consider hitting the like and subscribe, and helps us do weird stuff going in the future. But anyway, I do hope this helped, and if you think it could help someone you know, let them know it by sending it to them. Anyway, thank you so much, and oh yeah, I hope that you were something tasty today. Cheers. Okay. You want some coffee? It's really not bad. It could go finer, but I think it's not bad.